In previous director positions at the Ministry of Community and Social Services and the Ministry of Transportation, Shelley has led key initiatives for change and modernization efforts. At MCSS, she successfully established a new divisional branch, and her focus on continuous improvement led to the resolution of several gaps in client services. With more than 30 years of experience in the Ontario Public Service, Shelley is known for her dedication to relationship building and collaboration. In her role as ADM, she's committed to expanding stakeholder engagement, increasing the opportunity for consultation, and improving communications with the network. Ladies and gentlemen, Assistant Deputy Minister Shelley Unterlander.
Good morning, everybody. After that bio, I think I have about 5 minutes left to provide an update. It's interesting because we've all commented on our bios, and I think on paper, you just kind of go, yeah, that sounds like me, but when you read it out loud, it's like, who is that person? So I wanted to say it is a great pleasure to be here in Thunder Bay to be participating in this meeting, and really excited about some of the information that Aaron's provided, that Trina's provided, and I hope to talk about it from a practical perspective. Not that you're not practical, but I am the operations division within our ministry. So in my organization, all of the work that's underway in HSW and with the, the exciting projects in the LEPCs and the work with OCWI, it provides some really great opportunities for us from an operational perspective. As indicated, I just recently took over the role, so I'm newly minted as Assistant Deputy Minister. But I think the advantage for me right now is I bring the regional perspective into 900 Bay, Queen's Park. And so a lot of the work that's underway, I'm able to look at it from a lens that speaks to experience out in the field. So I'm going to talk a little bit today about some of the work that's underway in our division, and I hope in doing this update that you'll see some of the linkages between the LEPCs, the work in the LEPCs, the work that Aaron is doing in the highly skilled workforce, and see some of yourselves in that work. So I'm going to touch on some of the priorities for the year ahead. And I want to touch on some updates, and it looks like an exhaustive list, but I promise you I'll try to be as quick as possible. And then I think we're looking forward to the panel session with the questions later, and hopefully we, between the three of us and Madge, will be able to answer your questions. I do want to touch on these priorities, and I'm going to do so by using an anchor that you'll see as part of the theme. So for me in the operations division, there's really 4 anchors. Call them priorities, call them lens, but everything that we do, I'm looking at through a lens of continuous improvement, customer service, stakeholder engagement, and innovation. And so wanted to sort of anchor my updates around that. Oh, works when you turn it the right way. And those are the anchors there. So there's a lot of work underway right now to transform employment and training services and to fulfill the ministry's mandate of building a highly skilled workforce. Over the next year, we will continue this work, and as I indicated, these are the priorities that we look at this work through in the operations division of our ministry. I would like to start with continuous improvement, and I want to just briefly talk about the Ontario Auditor General's report. And it's important because in setting the course for continuous improvement over the next year for us in Employment Training Division was the Ontario Value for Money audit of our Employment Ontario programs. The report was released in November of 2016, and it resulted in 18 recommendations and 35 recommended actions and really over 5 key themes. We actually, as a ministry, welcome these recommendations, and they are enabling us as drivers of continuous improvement. Since the release of the Auditor General's report, at least within my division and our policy division, we've been able to divide up all of those recommendations and action plans, identify a lead person. We've got work plans, and we're busy working away to address those recommendations and action plans. And they will help inform the work as well of HSW and our policy division as we look at transformation of our Employment Ontario programs. We also know that the Auditor General will be back to pay us a visit in just under a year now, so we need to be able to demonstrate a significant progress on those recommendations. Aaron mentioned this briefly. We had 2 really key program evaluations of both our literacy and basic skills program and our second career program. Again, welcomed by the ministry. These are long-standing foundational programs that are, ripe for transformation and change. And the evaluations themselves included wide-ranging data collection and analysis, and it was with broad-ranging consultations. So the evaluation reports provided us with some valuable information through which we can take a look at those 2 key programs. And the reports were available on our EO network on April the 11th and 12th. So we plan to use the results of those evaluations to support the ministry's commitment to evidence-based decision-making, continuous improvement, and really take a look at what we can do with those programs. We're also about to launch some pretty extensive consultations that will help inform us on the need for transformation and change relative to those 2 programs. I wanted to touch briefly on Canada-Ontario Jobs Grant. Erin mentioned it in her presentation. It is one of several programs that my division is responsible for, and it is actually up for modernization and change as well, and it is a relatively new program. I actually used to joke about the Canada-Ontario Jobs Grant because it was the one program in the ministry when I joined 3 years ago that nobody had any history on, that because all of the other programs I had to learn acronyms and history and what happened and who's who, and so Canada-Ontario Jobs Grant and I had the same length of history with the ministry, and we're taking a look at that program. It was actually mentioned in the budget speech that COJG was, I think, going to be looked at to be refreshed, revitalized, refocused, re-something. But we will be taking a look at COJG. We just recently had a stakeholder engagement session with a group of COJG service providers because we were about to launch some interim changes to the program, and we had a really great discussion with the stakeholders and used their feedback to help fine-tune some of the changes that we were planning to make. On the Youth Job Connection program, I'm going to take a different approach here. We launched that program back in October of 2015. It's a program that is necessary. It's aimed at our multi-barriered youth. We've been getting some reasonable success. Actually, I was just recently at my Northern Region Branch all-staff meeting, and I encouraged us all to take a step back and actually celebrate the successes that we've had with this program, because we do know from the data that we've collected that we are reaching the targeted group that this program is intended to reach. We have had a fairly good success, but out of, I think we have 23,400 service plans started with about 9,900 client job placements. So there's still a lot of room for improvement. I'm going to use this as an example of where we need to do a little bit more. And I was director of Central Region at the time that the program launched, and we were fairly well along in the launch of the program. I'm going to say about 6 months in, and in Central Region we started to notice that, you know, the numbers weren't playing out the way that we wanted them to. We knew that our service providers were experiencing challenges with the way the program was designed, and started to raise that some of the design concerns across the province, and indeed our other regions were experiencing the same thing. So this is an example of a really great program, but it's not quite doing what we want it to do. And the example that really stood out for me as regional director was there's 4 mandatory components to that program. So as a service provider, you could spend a significant amount of time and get your client through maybe 2 of the mandatory components, and then something happens. So in a good case scenario, the client actually gets a job. In another good case scenario, they might decide to go back to school. But as a service provider, if that happens, you don't have a tiki box. You don't have an outcome. You have no way to record all of that work that you've put into that. So that tells us that we need to do some tweaking and fine-tuning here, because the work that got that client to where they are, we need to find some way to acknowledge that. So we are going to use that example as well as others related to our youth, and we are about to launch a youth job connection reference working group. One that we hope we can continue on a go-forward basis, but who better to help us inform how to tweak and improve than the people that are actually actively engaged with that program on the front line. I wanted to put Skills Advance in to provide you with a bit of an update from a customer perspective and a customer service perspective. And I indicated that customer service is a big priority for me. It is part of really what we do, and it's at the center of what we do. I am always mindful every day that whether it's you or our ministry, at the heart of what we do is a citizen of Ontario that is looking for help, looking for help to tap into the labor market. The Skills Advance Ontario pilot that we launched in 2016 is a 2-year sector-focused pilot, and it's basically focused on supporting workforce development in identified key growth sectors. So it's providing employers with access to hopefully job-ready, skilled workers, and it's providing job seekers with sector-focused employment and training services, including a paid placement that supports them to obtain an advance in employment. The reason why I wanted to pause here for a second is we're currently, as a ministry, supporting 4 of these. And we have 2 in Central Region. One is what we call a construction-focused SAO. The other one is in the hospitality sector. And we have 1 in Western Region from a manufacturing perspective, and 1 in Eastern Region that's more of a general industrial manufacturing sector. The construction pathway one in Toronto is very near and dear to my heart. I was actually worked on that project for 2 years as regional director. It's a huge undertaking. It involves a partnership with the City of Toronto, the Toronto Employment and Social Services team. It includes our transportation consortia, Metrolinx, our agency, and a wide variety of labor and trade partners. I was recently invited to visit the construction pathway because it's fully up and running and about to start intake. We've set up an integrated location right on the Eglinton Crosstown line. So this particular construction pilot is actually taking advantage of the jobs that are being provided by the Eglinton Crosstown line transportation major transportation project in Toronto right now. You just have to walk along Eglinton Avenue and it's just massive construction. We set this group up, Toronto Employment Social Services is working arm in arm with my team, including our service provider that we've contracted to work with Tess. I wanted to stop and pause because if you were a client and you walked into that construction pathway today and said you were looking for a job, you wouldn't be able to tell the difference between a Tess worker, a worker that belongs to the City of Toronto, and our service provider that we've contracted. They're so integrated, it's seamless to the job seeker, and it's just an example of really launching something that takes a look at the actual job seeker, the client at the heart of what it is we're trying to do. Another really client-focused example is just the recent announcement that you may have heard about last week. On June the 5th, the government announced an employment strategy for people with disabilities called Access Talent, and one of the key commitments of this strategy is the Supported Employment Program, which will be delivered through the Employment Ontario Network. So this is a very, it's a small launch. I call it small but mighty. It's being launched in 3 communities initially, and in phase 1 of this launch, we are really focusing on testing out the concept of providing more intensive support services to persons with disabilities, and it'll hopefully offer the flexibility and the choice needed for our persons with disabilities, and it will include job readiness training, job matching, long-term job retention services, and financial supports for assistive devices, adaptive technologies, and other workplace accommodations. So this is an example of where we're going in ensuring that our clients and their needs are at the heart and center of the programs and services we provide. So these are just 2 examples from a customer service lens. I'm going to go out on a limb here and talk a little bit about Indigenous training through an innovation lens. And so I think right now that we have so many different opportunities to think about or opportunities to become innovative when it comes to employment and training relative to our Indigenous communities. And I am making a commitment that I am trying to push at whatever is the art of the possible to see that we become more innovative. Innovation doesn't have to be big or mighty or splashy. It can be small steps, small incremental changes that really create a snowball. So in the North, there's actually some really exciting, I think, and innovative work happening to support our Indigenous activities. In the Kenora region, our ministry is providing both Shoal Lake number 39 and 40 with funding for training and capacity building through Employment Ontario programs. In the Timmins region, Macy funded a successful 2-year literacy and basic skills pilot, and we're exploring the expansion of literacy and basic skills along the James Bay coast. Our local office in Thunder Bay is working with KCATS Mattawa in pursuing apprenticeship opportunities for their community members. They've recently submitted to the Ministry an Employment Integration Services application that has the potential to become the first Northern Skills Advance Ontario pilot. So we're really excited about that, and I know my Northern Region branch is working and very keenly working on that proposal. We also, with the support of our Northern Region branch, Yes Employment as active partnerships with the North Bay Indian Friendship Centre, Métis Nation, and Navigating Employment Pathways to support service coordination. And our our Northern Region branch is also working with the North Shore Tribal Council in the Sault Ste. Marie and Sudbury areas on the possibility of them delivering Employment Ontario programs. This is really exciting. At least to me, we're so often hemmed down by rules and regulations and guidelines and program policy, and I'm really keen and interested in rolling up my sleeves to see what we can do today that's innovative while we're waiting for some of the larger transformation pieces to take place. I also know through my experience in Central Region that we have challenges with how we measure our Indigenous service providers. And I think we need to look for different opportunities to record outcomes in a different way relative to our Indigenous service providers. So I don't have any answers ready right now, but I'm signaling that we're ready to move forward, and definitely from an innovative lens. And of course, we have already heard today from Madge some of the really innovative work that's underway in Thunder Bay with the LEPC in Thunder Bay. There's lots of examples across the province with the 8 LEPCs, and I'm really excited by that work, because between the work of the LEPCs and AQUI, I don't know if you like that name, Trina, but it's what we call you. This is providing us, the ministry, me, in my division, with an opportunity to take full advantage of some of the really innovative, research-driven work that's taking place right now that I'm fully waiting to take advantage of in the role that I'm in. I'm mindful of time, so I'm just gonna wrap up very quickly. I think that's my last slide, but Aaron talked very briefly about the Apprenticeship Modernization piece underway, and I find that this, the Apprenticeship Modernization, especially the stakeholder engagement piece that we're kicking off this week, actually Thursday in Toronto, is exciting, because it's very much done through the lens of the client, and you only have to look at their current journey through the system to see just how confusing it can be, and anything that we can do to help facilitate that journey and make it one that makes a little more sense, I think will be a big win all around. But that's not just what our modernization, apprenticeship modernization work is all about. So I actually want to just wrap up by saying that in the 3.5 months that I've been Assistant Deputy Minister, really have built a strong partnership with Aaron. I think Aaron's work presents an exciting opportunity to our ministry, and that will translate itself into the operational world that I live in, and we find ourselves at a lot of the same tables. So I think it's just it's a signal that policy and operations need to work hand in hand, so that at the end of the day, we end up with something that actually makes sense from a client's perspective. So I think I'll stop there and encourage questions when we get to the panel part of our discussion. Thank you.